Welcome to Sinister Heroes. I'm your host, Danny Iniquitous. Thank you for tuning in. If you're new to the channel, this is a channel where we talk about Dungeons and Dragons. Normally that's the case, but today we're doing something a little different. Today I wanted to talk about something that's very near and dear to my heart, Vampire the Masquerade. Now, that's going to be a totally different set from D&D, but I think it's worth talking about, especially if you were interested in playing something a little different that's still a ttrpg. So, first and foremost, Vampire the Masquerade is a very different type of game. If you want to play a game that is more roleplay oriented and you want to deal with powers and negotiations and trying to survive in a very deadly kind of environment, then Vampire the Masquerade is the game for you. Vampire takes place modern day, so you are in cities and places of your real, like you can have them take place in your own town and use these landmarks and really kind of make it very personal to the place you live in, which is a very big part of Vampire the Masquerade. It's really supposed to reflect those kinds of areas. There's really a couple of pillars that are really important in Vampire the Masquerade, and that's understanding the kind of the way the politics work, blood, and humanity. And that's what we're going to talk about in sequence. So the first thing we're going to talk about is humanity. What humanity is in Vampire the Masquerade is what keeps you from losing yourself to what's called the beast, or the animalistic part of being a vampire. That beast is a problem. It is deadly. It is a risk for all vampires in the area, and we'll talk about a little bit more when we get into the political stuff. So in Vampire the Masquerade, especially in the last version, you have things called touchstones. You have places that you live. You have your home. You have people that you care about, people that were part of your family, that you look out for. They are both a weakness and a strength. Protecting them, keeping these areas safe that mattered a lot to you, those things keep your humanity in check and keep you from losing your humanity. Losing those people, getting them killed, or killing them yourself is very, very bad for you. And the reason why I say this is, as you take actions throughout Vampire the Masquerade, some of them may cause you to lose humanity. If you lose enough humanity, you no longer are, you become fully possessed by what's called the beast. This causes your character to become an NPC, and you can no longer play that character. They are lost to madness. All they do is lash out at everything and try and drink the entire planet dry. It is a problem. Beasts are a very, very bad thing to every faction in Vampire the Masquerade. So keeping in touch with your humanity, keeping these things safe, keep you from becoming a murder hobo like you would in D&D, because obviously that can be a big problem. We just wanted to pause the video for a moment and say a big thank you to our Patreon supporters. We love you guys. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. What you do for us is amazing. And a big thank you to our good friends at Critical Failures, who are part of a live stream game Wednesday nights, and to check us out on our World of Warcraft stream channel, Veldcrest. The links to all these is in the description. Now let's continue on with the video. The second thing I want to talk about is blood. Blood is the most important thing. It is, certain factions could instill blood taxes where you have to provide vessels and or blood to the community. And that can be very, very detrimental, because you do have to hunt and feed yourself, and that is a risk. That again we'll all talk about when we talk about factions after this. Blood also has very specific purposes to you. There's a certain thing in the latest version called resonance. So if you were, say your character used to be a drug abuser, that character would prefer to feed on other people who have taken drugs, because it revitalizes them. It gives them a bonus to them and their overall feeding ability. Like, it makes the blood just that much better. And all of these resonances depend on the kind of character that you create. So depending on who your character is, you would hunt specific people and things, and feeding on them would be a greater benefit to you than feeding on just whatever is available. Hunting is a dangerous thing, because you do need to drink blood. You are a vampire. It takes place in modern day, so cell phones are real, street cameras are real, in front of like stores where they have security cameras. All of that is real, so you have to avoid those things, otherwise you cause greater problems. And again, we'll talk about that in factions. So hunting is important. Doing it stealthily, doing it in a safe way, however you can get it done is whoever you can get it done. And then you have specific people that hunting would benefit you. So you kind of get this like focused hunter, like you have a prime prey, and mitigating that, and you don't have to kill your prey to feed on them. And holding back, preventing that from happening is something that's very important to maintaining your humanity as well. The politics and the way that the factions work in Vampire the Masquerade is crucial to everything you're doing. Basically, if you've ever played the games, it's kind of very true in the role-playing part of the world as well. So however you get turned, and I do suggest you play a game where you're freshly being turned, as opposed to being a vampire that's already existed for a long period of times, because it's a better way to introduce you to the way the structure of the world is, to who these factions are, what they represent, and how they do things. So that's a very key thing. So just, it's just a personal preference. If you want to play at a higher caliber of vampire, an elder vampire, be my guest. So factions, there are 3 factions. There are the Sabbat, there is the Camarilla, and there is the anarchs. Here is the important thing. The Sabbat, their whole thing is, we are vampires, we deserve to rule everything. We feed on these people like they're cattle, and they should be treated as such. The Camarilla is the most organized of all, because the Sabbat is really, really just kind of chaotic, and it's kind of just whoever has the strongest power, you're the guy. But they're really all about just feeding and treating humanity like cattle and putting themselves above. So they are very dangerous, and we'll get a little bit more into them in just a second. The Camarilla are the faction of people that have existed for like ever. They believe everyone is a part of the Camarilla, and they're often butting heads with the anarchs. They have a very strict order of things. Everything has their place, everybody does their thing, and everybody falls into order. And to maintain, the most important thing about the Camarilla is maintaining the Masquerade. The Masquerade is what keeps humanity from knowing that vampires exist, keeping us hidden, keeping us in small numbers, keeping us so that way we're not just rampantly running the streets and or abusing our powers in the streets, so that way we don't get hunted by vampire hunters, which is a real thing. The Society of Leopold is like a sect of vampire hunters who infiltrated everything and have gotten into like the FBI and the CIA. Like, they are a real thing. If you violate the Masquerade, you introduce the Society of Leopold as hunters into your area. Violating the Masquerade makes you enemies of all other vampires, because you're now putting them in the spotlight, and they don't like that. So the Camarilla's main focus is doing that and upholding structure, kind of like a king or like a monarchy. So they would have a position of power called a prince. The prince takes care of the entire city. Right now in New York, we are under the rule of the Camarilla. In LA, we're under the rule of the Sabbat. Of the anarchs. And the Sabbat have maintained order in a bunch of places. In fact, they used to be the rulers of New York up until the Camarilla came back and beat them out of the city. The anarchs. The anarchs believe that all the vampires have a right to rule themselves. Don't get yourselves in trouble, and you don't have to obey the Camarilla. You can be your own guy, do your own thing. Just don't cause problems. The anarch way conflicts a lot with the Camarilla, because the Camarilla believes that the anarchs are still part of the Camarilla. They're just acting out and being problematic. But the anarchs really believe that you don't owe anyone anything, that as long as you don't violate the Masquerade, you're good to be on your own and do whatever and live out in peace. You don't owe anything. If the prince from the Camarilla calls onto you for something, for anything, or needs people to do something, you can just give him the finger and move on with your life. Where the Camarilla believes, if there's an issue, we have to work as a unit to do that, to handle that, or to send stuff out. Not to say that the anarchs are not proactive about maintaining their people in their areas. They're just a little less about somebody else telling you to do it, and more so about being able to work together, and everybody kind of like represents themselves. Like they're very like anti-establishment, the anarchs. So now the anarchs and the Camarilla, they butt heads a lot. The Sabbat fights everybody. The Sabbat often will do things that violate the Masquerade because they refuse to limit themselves. So they will do things like run into a town and just mass turn people just to create chaos. And so, like, all these people are victims of being turned into a vampire, are now waking up and needing to feed, and it causes chaos. And that causes the Camarilla to freak out and the anarchs to freak out, because the two of them are then trying to clean up the mess, and then the Sabbat can start moving in. It's very, they're very just cause a problem, take over, cause a problem, take over, cause a bigger problem, take over more. They are more about like zerging the enemy and overwhelming them with their power, as opposed to being more reserved and smart about it. These factions all hang in the balance no matter where you are in the world, because vampires of this caliber exist all over the place. So you find yourself, no matter where you are, if you do still happen to have a sire or the person that turns you, whatever their allegiance is most likely your allegiance. And regardless, these all need to work together. It's important that they keep up the facade of working and having good communications between each factions, because easily one faction war can cause a humongous amount of problems. If there was someone in a very high position of power in the Camarilla that dies, the anarchs can assume that control by just taking it. The way you gain power is through a lot of wheeling and dealing, as well as your own ability to defend yourself or to provide the necessary means to subdue your enemies. All of this is important. The Camarilla and the anarchs all have the rules for making familiars, like people that worship you and drink your blood and do what you want and like kind of like support you. They have their own rules for that. They have their own rules for siring people. In the Camarilla, you have to get permission before you create a new vampire. If you don't, you can be killed, and so will your vampire sire. So it's very much a very hard negotiating kind of a world. Sabbat doesn't care. Just turn whoever you want, whatever you want, as long as it follows their rule of pushing them to ruling all. They're very, very much, and they're not necessarily wrong. That's the thing about them. They believe themselves to be right because they believe in, through their knowledge and through their history, when vampires were first created, vampires were ruling everything. They were gods, and they refused to not live like gods. And some of them are old, and the older you are, the stronger you are. It's a very important thing. A lot of Vampire the Masquerade is surviving. A lot of Vampire the Masquerade is you going out because the higher ups don't want to go out, but it's dangerous for them as well. And if one of them die, it's a bigger problem for everyone. So the three pillars really kind of work well together. You have to maintain your humanity in order to be able to not lose yourself to a monster that's going to cause you and the people you care about difficulties, if not killing them. Get the people you care about put in danger from you violating the Masquerade, getting your people hunted by the Society of Leopold, by the vampire hunters, and making sure you have the availability to survive throughout this world is based on your availability to provide blood for yourself, keep your humanity in check, and work within these factions to do so. Everyone is going to want to use you for something. It is a lot more beneficial for a higher powered vampire like an elder to use someone below them in order to accomplish goals for a number of reasons. A, they are really powerful, and you do not want to mess with them. B, they do not want to let themselves out into the open because it does cause more danger, because the longer you live, the stronger you are, but the more enemies you have. Everyone wants power. It is important. You want to rule over a city block or a neighborhood, you got to fight all the other people who want that neighborhood. And you got to be able to defend it constantly. Because if it's not the enemy faction trying to move in, it's your own people wanting to take it. Remember, you're a vampire. You are not a good cookie cutter person. Yes, you could have good qualities and good traits. At the end of the day, you are feeding on humanity. You are feeding on people that you used to idolize, used to be in love with, used to date, used to be friends with, people who you've worked with, people who you know. Those people are viable sources of your food. You are not that person anymore. You have to accept the fact that you are part vampire. And yeah, sometimes you do have to kill people who are trying to kill you. Sometimes you do have to make deals with the bad guy. But sometimes you're the bad guy. Depending on the circumstances, it's very, very dangerous to kind of mitigate your hunger for blood, need for blood, and blood fueling all of your powers and abilities, driving you to be more hungry. Keeping the masquerade, and then on top of that, keeping your humanity in check. Those are the battles that every vampire has to fight daily. And then the factions and the politics of it is a big portion of how you grow what you want to be. Whatever vampire you start out being, regardless of clan or what kind of personality your vampire wants, once the story develops, you then get the opportunity to see how different each one of these factions are, their goods, their bads, and whether or not that's the right faction for you to want to be a part of. And that's going to dictate who you are. Are you going to be a part of that? Are you going to change with the coming tide? Or are you going to do your own thing? All those things matter a lot into your decision making, because at the end of the day, other vampires see you as below them, and when you're below someone in a hierarchy, no matter what hierarchy it belongs to, you're expendable. And they're willing to get rid of you for whatever goals they need accomplished. So when you do grow in power and you can meet them face on, what do? Who is that vampire? Those things are questions that you're going to have to answer as you play throughout Vampire the Masquerade. It's a very, very cool, it's a very great setup, because the enemies are not mindless. If they are losing, they are smart enough to run. They will run out into public streets because they know you cannot chase them. Other vampires, if they see they're losing or that doesn't look optimal, they are out. And some of them have super speed, which is something we'll discuss, or some of if we continue on with this and discuss some of the powers and abilities, where they move incredibly fast, and they cannot do that in public. But rest assured, they can get miles ahead of you in enough time for them to escape. And when they live, they have friends who now don't like you. So it's a great way to kind of curb that murder hobo mentality you get in D&D, which is so easy to get and very hard to shake. And understand that you don't always win the fights. Sometimes you fight to a dead heat, and then that's it. Because if you can't kill them in 5 rounds, they're gone. They are gone, because they're smart enough to know it's not worth this endeavor, or it's risky to their life. And that puts Vampire in a whole different perspective as far as combat and storytelling and purpose, because your actions really have consequences. So with that out of the way, this was our first video talking about Vampire the Masquerade. We might do some more stuff about it because it happens to be something I really love and enjoy. If you enjoyed this, definitely tell us about it. Tell us if you've played Vampire, if you played Werewolf the Apocalypse, Wraith, Mage, any of it. Let me know in the comments. I want to hear about it. I definitely want to hear about if you've ever played it, or some of the things you might be interested about it. A big thank you to our Patreon supporters. We love you guys. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. A big thank you to our good friends at Critical Failures, where we're part of a live stream game on Wednesday nights. And check us out on our World of Warcraft channel, Velcrest. The links to all 3 is in the description. And thank you for giving a spooky kid a chance.